Well, whether it's commercial, personal, or any type of insurance, pricing is important. Price is important.
Mm-hmm.
About I'm not naive not to think business people, everybody has a pocketbook, whether it's business or personal. But price isn't the end all be all.
Hi, welcome to Build with BBB podcast. My name is Kit Letcher. I'm the president and CEO for BBB serving Central Oklahoma, and I will be guest hosting our podcast today. And I am so excited to be here with Stephen Conway with Stephen Conway Insurance, and we're going to be talking about the very hot topic of commercial insurance. So I hope that you get some good nuggets and takeaways from today's conversation. And Stephen, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Good. Well, we're excited that you're here. So I'm curious about, insurance is probably not something that people just wake up one day and think, you know what I want to do? Insurance. I'm really excited about that as my calling and career path. So I'm curious, how did you get into this line of business?
Out of college, first job, just sort of grew with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked on the company side of it in different aspects. And then about 20 some years ago, I had the opportunity to open my own agency, and I did.
Nice. That's excellent. Have you always been here in Oklahoma?
Yes.
Okay.
Born and raised.
I love it. So you understand the dynamics of being an Oklahoma small business owner,
Yes.
because that's really your bread and butter.
I hope I did.
It's great. So I'm curious, what are the things that you really like about providing insurance and working with your clients in insurance?
It's just trying to get policies and coverages to help them, because you don't need insurance till you need it. And, otherwise you don't need the coverage until you need it. So it's just hopefully get them policies that in the event of an unforeseeable loss that they have coverage in place to help compensate for their damages and losses without them being too much out of pocket.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, you never know what you need until you actually need it. And then an event happens, and then people often go back and think, oh my gosh, what did I even sign up for? Did I get the right kind of insurance? So I'm curious what you've seen over the years as being some of the biggest hurdles or roadblocks that business owners face.
On the insurance side, I just think sometimes what industry they're in, sometimes it just makes them harder to place. And then companies at times have changes in appetite. So they end up are forced to move because the company's no longer riding that appetite. Some of the biggest changes were like property, trying to get your property covered in today's market if you own the building. So that's some of the hurdles. The change in the industry, and not necessarily you did anything wrong, but just the appetite for that particular what you're doing, carriers sort like no longer want to write or really restrict what they're doing, and then you're really trying to find place to place them. So
Yeah.
that's what I find sometimes the most difficult.
Yeah.
Is this the way the market changes, and sometimes people are just left sort of holding the bag, so to speak, trying to where do we go from here?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm assuming that's why working with somebody like you makes it really easy, because you can help direct people to the right kind of path forward, or, hey, these are some changes that are coming. So things that you might want to consider changing or looking at for the next couple of years.
Yes. Yeah. Just the change in the market, and then help them find a carrier or marketplace that fits what they need in a policy.
Yeah.
And also, companies are there to help the insureds too.
Mm-hmm.
So like a lot of companies have, on the commercial side, have risk management companies to help minimize coverages. So it's just not all about paying claims. Sometimes a lot of commercial carriers do have, risk management teams in place to help clients, to see where there might be issues and help mitigate them.
Can you think of any situations, and I realize I'm putting you on the spot when I say this, can you think of any situations where you've seen that really work well for some of your clients?
Just years ago on the workers' comp side is that when I worked for a company, we had some companies that had high losses, and they got the risk management team involved, and they made recommendations. The companies heeded their recommendations, and then after a few years, they noticed a decrease in claims, which helps, lower claims typically helps their workers' comp rates and stuff like that. So it can be valuable if the company is willing to take heed of that.
Right. Sometimes we don't want the advice we're given.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
It's fair.
So, but then also the primary job of a company is pay the claims, legitimate claims.
Right. What, as you're working with your clients and you're going through their policies and doing annual renewals and things like that, what are the questions you wished that business owners would ask or think about before they come to that meeting as a way to be, more educated or well informed so that they're leaving with the right information?
I think just giving the agents a clear understanding of what you're doing. The clearer you are that the agent understands what you're doing, that way they can get a better idea of what coverages you might need, and plus relay that to the underwriters too.
Yeah.
You know, also what changes you might see going on in the down the road. That way we can be prepared. And then also, just asking also what want to be covered for.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that whether it's commercial, personal, whatever. Sometimes it's not so much what's covered; it's the exclusions, limitations, and restrictions in the policy that are just as important, or maybe even more important than the actual what's actually covered in the language in the policy.
Yeah,
So
that's a really great point.
I think a lot of people lose what's covered. Well, okay, this covered, but you need to look at what's also not
Here's the
covered.
things that won't be paid for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I think that's a lot of people they lose that that's a big thing that I think a lot of people they don't focus, they don't pay attention to that part.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
No, that makes perfect sense. I'm curious when you say that the business owner should come and be prepared to talk about like what changes they're seeking and what kind of things would that entail? Like if they're planning on hiring more people, if they're making a property change or just operational change.
Yeah, like if you're going to look to take on more payroll, that could, if your things based on payroll, that could have a negative impact at audit, because that way you might be able to be proactive and get it adjusted midterm as opposed to at audit, and you're not hit with the shock of a bill. Or like, you might be looking to buy a property. That way you can kind of see what the rates might be, just kind of like what if there's going to be changes
Right.
down the road. That way both you and the client, the agent and the client, can kind of work together as far as maybe helping get what you're looking at rate wise and how that's going to affect it. So
Same as if you're like before you buy a car.
maybe, yeah.
What is this going to do to my insurance?
Yeah.
Looking at buying a building, what is this going to do?
I'm looking to take on this new contract. I don't have to hire 5 more employees. Well, how's that going to affect my rate?
Yeah.
How's it going to affect my coverage?
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
And one of the things that you mentioned earlier was also having your insurance agent or broker have a clear understanding of what it is that you do. So I know we meet with ours once a year, if not more frequently, based upon just kind of our goings on. So they're very familiar with our organization and our operations. But would you recommend an in-person meeting or even like a tour of offices? Like how involved do you think an insurance broker should be?
I think it's between them and the client. Some people, they don't want, they just, here's the numbers you come
Right.
up. So it's kind of like, how much the client wants the agent involved. If it's unclear, if the client is okay with the agent going on site and kind of view it, that sometimes gives an agent a better idea as far as the exposures of what's going on.
Right.
And make sure everything's rated right. Definitely review, talk to them, because operations change year to year. You could own a bar and, you're open, you close at 10 every night, and then all of a sudden you decide to be open till 2. Well, that could change the risk. Or you were just serving beer, and then all of a sudden now you're serving alcohol and food. Hard liquor and food.
Yeah.
So that changes the exposure. Or like a church, you could be a church, and all of a sudden you're going to be running a daycare from it.
Okay.
That happens in the middle of policy term. So sometimes, walking through, you can kind of see that. And also agents can kind of maybe just see things that might be an issue come underwriting for hazards. That looks like that might be an issue with underwriting. So it can be addressed a little bit sooner.
Yeah.
So, it's always, the more information you had, sometimes it's better. That way there's no less chance of surprises. It's just basically what the client and the agent feels comfortable with.
Good. Well, switching gears just a tiny bit. You've been accredited with BBB for several years now. And I remember when we first met and you came on board as an accredited business and we're like, okay, tell me what this is and why I should be accredited. And we had a long conversation about it. And so now that you've been with us for years, and I'm so glad that you've stayed on board, I'm curious what benefits you see from being an accredited business and why you choose to stay.
Still being old school, the BBB still has that one of the first places that you could go to as a consumer for validation as far as the business goes. Reviews, comments, and that they're actually a legitimate business. I think that still holds a lot of weight because just the history. So I just think just being accredited and knowing that consumers can actually file a complaint and it's looked into, I think holds a lot of weight, still. So it's also good to have that, people, when you see accredited, it means there's at least some vetted process that business went through to be accredited and that they're meeting certain standards to be accredited, just not pay money for it, that they do have to actually meet certain standards.
Right.
So that's the reason I keep it.
Okay, good. So as a business owner and a consumer, you still look for accredited businesses. And if those businesses display their seal of accreditation and using the website.
Yeah, that's one thing I do is I do go and look and said, are they accredited? Are they licensed? Do they have are they accredited BBB? Are there any bad reviews on BBB? My understanding with BBB is that if it's just because a review is not necessarily posted unless you guys do research on it.
Right, it has to be verified.
Unlike Google, where someone can just post anything they want, there's no validation as far as that person. So at least if someone's got a bad review on their website, to me, that on their profile, that means that the BBB at least did some validation that there was concerns that this was a legitimate complaint,
right?
And posted as opposed to just willy nilly. I didn't like the way you talked to me.
Yeah, that's accurate. We do get people that call and say, I just wanted an apology. And it's like, that's not what we're here for.
Yeah.
It needs to be an actual interaction where you need a resolution.
So it just gives another validation for my business. So
yeah. Excellent. You are a business that comes to most of our networking events, which I love that you are engaged that way. I'm curious how that has benefited your business.
I just think just getting your name out to other business owners. So, you might not necessarily do business for them, but they have you in mind for other people. They see you around, that you get to know them, the trust, and then just being able to be seen out there that you are open for business. Other business owners see you as open for business. But just again, validation and verification that you're around and you're looking for clients and you're active and you're hopefully get to know the people there, that they trust you, get to know you where they feel comfortable about referring people to you.
Yeah.
And vice versa too.
Yeah, I'm sure you've made some good connections over the years.
Yeah, I have.
That's good. So with everything that we've talked about today and just the insurance industry specifically, what is the one big takeaway or two big takeaways that you would love for business owners to think about as they're renewing their insurance policy or looking for new insurance?
Well, whether it's commercial, personal, or any type of insurance, pricing is important. Price is important, but I'm not naive not to think business people, everybody has a pocketbook, whether it's business or personal. But price isn't the end-all be-all as far as what a policy. It's just looking at what you're being quoted. Like if you own a commercial building, what's the value they're insuring the building at? How are they insuring? What type of valuation are they insuring it for? Replacement cost, actual cash value. What's your deductible? Is it a 2% wind hail? Is it 5%? Is it a 10%? Deductible, and because all that's going to determine the rate. So a lot of people say, even on the commercial side is this person quoted me X amount of dollars. Well, the devil's in the details. It's like, okay, what are they covering? Like a building, how much are they covering the building for? Are they doing replacement cost versus an actual cash value? Are they quoting a 10% wind hail, or are they quoting a 2% or something thereof? That all can drive the rate. So it's just look at what they're actually quoting and look at the details before you make a decision.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, price is important, but sometimes, as I've told people, time of claim, you're going to pay it one end or the other. You're either going to pay at the premium or at the time, or what they pay you on the claim. So that's what I just tell people. Just look at your policy, what's written, ask questions.
Mind your exclusions.
Yeah, look at what's not covered, but also, like what's the difference in this quote versus that quote or these quotes, and they're not all going to be the same, not all going to be exact. So you'll have to make a decision that's best for your business or family and go with it.
Yeah.
But it's looking at the details.
Excellent. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to touch on today is your website. You have a lot of different information for a variety of people on your website. So tell us a little bit about what individuals, consumers, business owners can find when they go to your website.
Typically, I have like the major carriers that I represent, their contact information, have like if someone needs to make a payment, claim processes and stuff like that. Also blogs, like a lot of people do, just things that I find that might help clients, information about if you're a contractor or if you own a restaurant, just things you might want to consider as far as coverages or things that they're not all be all, it's not all be all list, but it just kind of helps. Just, hey, I didn't think about that. And then, also just non-insurance related stuff that still affects everybody, like fraud, cyber risk, stuff like that. So just stuff that I find interesting that I think that my clients or people might, think about just looking at. It might be helpful. Yeah. So even if it's a little tidbit of information that they can put away and maybe help them later on, or a question they might ask their own agent or somebody that's doing something for them.
Perfect.
Like, like if you own your house, it's people don't think it. You hire a contractor. Can I see your certificate of insurance? Just things like people don't realize, hey, he tells me he's insured. Or like, did you go to, you hire an electrician? Did you go to the industry boards and see if their license is still valid?
Yeah.
So do you want to hire an electrician that the license is not valid and doesn't have insurance? I mean, probably not.
Which is why you should choose an accredited business,
That's
because we check that for you.
That is true. That's right. If you go to BBB and just go to their website and type in electrician and then find one near your zip code, they're more than likely they are licensed and they're having bad reviews. So
that's right.
So that's another reason to use BBB. Yeah, but people don't think of that. Like, what happens if that person you hire doesn't have insurance and they burn down your house?
Right.
That's an extreme situation, but it's stuff like that. That don't necessarily have to be like you need these coverages, but just things that are tangent to the insurance world that hopefully give people just a little tidbit of information that might be able to help them in their lives.
Yeah, excellent. Well, we will be sure to include your website and more details about your blog also in our details for our show.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here with us today. I certainly appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us today. You can certainly find past episodes and this episode on our YouTube channel and any other place that you can listen to podcasts. And thank you for joining us. And we're excited to see you next time. Bye.